Hello everyone, today I'm going to be doing the deck profile for LockDown. I've been using it for a while, so today seemed like an appropriate date to do it on. This deck is all about making it very hard for your opponent to actually make moves against your field and your cards. Not by stunning them necessarily, which it can to a certain extent, but by making your cards kind of slippery. So whatever they play, they can play it, but nothing will happen. So jumping right into it, first off we have White Dragon Ninja. It's very important to not be running this card at 3. 2 is the very appropriate number. They're a pretty unfortunate dead draw, although there are ways to summon it in this build. It's far better to have it at 2. You need at least one in the deck at most times, and it is, again, it's possible to summon it, but if you have more than one in your hand, you're not going to. Before I move on, it's also part of a very important block in the deck. For anyone that's familiar with ninjas, it's a very key card, which I'll go into later. Next up is Grandmaster Hanzo. This is an important card to run at 3. It is one of the... It's part of what makes the deck consistent. When you summon Hanzo, you get to search out a super transformation, specifically this one, which then, using your opponent's monsters, makes White Dragon Ninja. It's also dark in level 4, which fits into the theme of all the other monsters. Next up is Strike Ninja. This card plays 2 different roles in the deck at once. One role is that it's a slippery card because you can banish 2 darks from your grave, and then it just banishes itself and dodges anything that can possibly get in its way. And then, of course, it's also a ninja, so it works with Super Transformation for getting out White Dragon Ninja. Since that is an important card, you do need multiple ninjas to make it consistent, and running it at 2 is, I would say, the best idea. I tried it at 3, but I would draw into ninjas too often, and my hand would just be full of them. Even though there's only 5 of them in the deck, I'm not even sure how that happened. I tried 6 and thought it wasn't going to be enough, but it ended up being too many, so 2 seems to work. Next up is Evil Swarm Thunderbird. This is another it's just a slippery card. It's also level 4 dark, just like Strike Ninja, just like Hanzo. And this is a notoriously hard to get rid of card. When your when your opponent does it, when a card effect is activated, doesn't matter who or when, you can activate this thing's effect and it banishes it. And then when it comes back to the field, it gains 300 attack, effectively making it a 1950 level 4 beat stick. So it's just a really great card. If your opponent tries to Dark Hole or Torrential or any number of cards, you can just banish it out of the way. Next up is Gravekeeper Spy. This is just a tech card, really. It helps to get out certain XYZs really quickly. It's a dark level 4. It is pretty nice to have it out on the first turn, simply because it has 2000 defense, and then the moment it gets flipped, be it on an attack or you flipping it next turn, you get another Gravekeeper Spy, and it's a free XYZ. So a pretty simple card. Next up is Barrier Statue of the Abyss. This is my personal tech choice. I was originally thinking about making a barrier statue type deck, but using all of them, there wasn't really a whole lot you could do with them, so I just splashed one in that fit with the overall theme. One of the reasons why I tried to make all of the other monsters dark is so that I could be using Abyss Statue, because while this is on the field, only dark monsters can be special summoned, so while you negate your opponent's ability to summon most monsters, you yourself will still be able to use most of the cards in the deck. The only exceptions being White Dragon Ninja and a couple cards in the extra deck, but if you're stopping all of your opponent's plays, you don't necessarily need this, and this does all the work that you need it to. And then moving on to the spells, that's all the monsters, we have Reinforcement of the Army. This just helps in the consistency of the ninjas. Like I said, I'm only running 5. I don't know, it still feels like it's not enough, even though it clearly is. And then Reinforcement of the Army, it helps thin the deck. It searches out your key ninja cards, which they are very important. And overall, it just helps with consistency a lot. And then same goes with Pot of Duality. It's strictly in here just for consistency purposes. This deck, it doesn't actually special summon on your own turn that often. Whenever you use Hanzo, or most of the time anyways, it'll be on your opponent's turn after they summon a monster. A lot of times, if you have a Gravekeeper Spy, it'll be special summoning another spy on your opponent's turn when they attack. So Duality it fits in really well. It doesn't block any of your moves. Next up is Pot of Duplicity. I originally intended to use this card at 3 because you would be able to recycle White Dragon Ninja. You'd be able to recycle your other ninjas, and everything is just a different card type. So, especially including the extra deck, it fits really well and helps recycle your key plays. But having it at 3 actually didn't work too well. This deck doesn't like to dump monsters into the grave very quickly. So, whenever you draw them early, like within the first 3 turns, they tend to just be dead cards. And I don't know, something with Duplicity Online, when you're playing it in multiples, you tend to draw them, or you tend to open with them like crazy. So I moved it down to 2, and I still kind of had the same problem, and then I moved it down to 1. I actually thought I might have had to take it out, but once I put it at 1, it seemed like the perfect number, and I was drawing it at appropriate times. And then even if I open with 1, it's not that big of a deal, because it's just 1 card, and it'll come in handy down the road. Next up is the final spell, MST. Usual staple that a lot of people like to run, especially this format with how many back row people have been using. I like to run it at 3, although if you have a different opinion of it, you can feel free to cite it. It's really no big deal. Next up are the traps. This is what makes up the primary bulk of the deck and what makes it really good. So first off, we have another staple, Bottomless. I do like protecting my monsters. I've always said that back row wins games, so I do like running an ample amount of it. And especially when you're running a Bottomless and you can banish your opponent's monster and not have it in the grave, that's always a huge plus. So honestly, if I could be using 3, I would be. Next up is Mirror Force, just another monster protection card. You get to go 1 for however many monsters your opponent has on the field. The next one is Evac. I thought about running Torrential over this, but I always had monsters on my field that I didn't want to destroy, so I have Evac in there instead. I guess in worst case scenarios, you can also use it to protect your ninjas and stuff if you really need their effects to go off, or if you're trying to save it for Super Transformation. And next up is Vanity's Emptiness. This card is absolutely amazing in this deck. It's what makes it so good, and it gets a lot of its wins. It stops both players from special summoning, and the goal of this card in this deck is you use it after you have a certain monster out, specifically White Dragon Ninja, because usually the weakness of Vanity's Emptiness is that when a card from your field or deck goes to the grave, it destroys itself. But with White Dragon Ninja on the field, it means that this won't be able to get destroyed, so no matter what gets sent to your grave, it'll remain on the field and neither player can special summon. Although in that situation, you already special summon, so you don't need to continue with that. It also really helps with the beatdown strategy, because if you have a Hanzo or especially a Thunderbird or something, it's going to be really hard for your opponent to get over these monsters. So especially if they can't special summon and there's a monster that just keeps bouncing out of the way of everything they do, it's going to put them in a really bad place. Next up is Safe Zone. This is another key card to the deck, just like Vanity's Emptiness. It's what pulls off all the wins. So you have White Dragon Ninja. This is the full lock where you have White Dragon Ninja on the field, you have Vanity's Emptiness, and you have a Safe Zone on White Dragon Ninja. Now this is a breakable lock, but most decks actually don't run any way to get over this because it's such a dirty combo. What you do is you get White Dragon Ninja out. Now your spells and traps can't be destroyed. You activate Safe Zone and you target the White Dragon Ninja. Now, because of Safe Zone, White Dragon Ninja can't be targeted or destroyed, and your Safe Zone also can't be destroyed. The only things that they can possibly use against this combo are cards that either they banish or return to the deck or send to the grave. Otherwise, you can't touch this combo. And then especially when you have Vanity's Emptiness, it's just kind of like adding insult to injury that not only do you have this nearly unbreakable monster combo, but you're negating all of their special summons, so it might make it really hard on them. Even if they do have a card to break the combo, they might not be able to play it effectively. Next up is Fiendish Chain. Honestly, this is just more monster protection, help to stop your opponent's plays when need be. So I like running 3. I've never been a fan of Valor. I know that some people like to run Valor over Fiendish Chain, but I like this one so much more. You can bait out MSTs, which, if you take out a bunch of traps and you only have a certain amount, then their MSTs are going to hit all of your good targets, whereas if you have tons more traps and they have MSTs, they won't really be able to respond to it well. Like, they'll destroy one, but you'll just have more in its place, and they won't like that. So I do like running Fiendish Chain over Valor. Finally, in the main deck, as I've already kind of pointed out, it's Super Transformation. A lot of people really hate this card, even though I don't think it's quite as good as people give it credit for. I mean, it's decent, but what you do is you summon a Grandmaster Hanzo or a Strike Ninja, or any ninja, but in this deck it's going to be these two. And if your opponent has a monster that's at least level 3, you target both of the monsters with this trap, you send the ninja and their monster to the grave, and then you special summon the White Dragon Ninja from the deck. I mean, that's good. You're going basically 0 for 1, but it's only a +1. Like, you're not really gaining that much advantage, and people, they tend to rage quit at it. I mean, I understand, but it's still not that amazing. But that is the goal, though. You use this to specifically get out White Dragon Ninja. And then moving on to the extra deck. First off, we have Crazy Box. I only run this at 1. Most of the reason is that all of the monsters, excluding White Dragon Ninja, they're level 4s and they're darks. So you can kind of just go nuts with running tons of rank 4s. And Crazy Box is great in specific situations where you need to summon something with enough attack that your opponent won't be able to get over it. And it's basically using offense as defense. It also has a number of effects that they're kind of luck sack effects. So if you're in a really screwed up situation, you can go ahead and just kind of roll the die and see if you get something good. There have been a number of times where I'll get to destroy a card on the field or draw a card and it'll put me right back into the game. Next up is Evil Swarm Ouroboros. Did I pronounce that right? Ouroboros? Yeah, okay, Ouroboros. I got that right. I tend to use this most against troll decks, specifically Exodia. If you can make your opponent discard a card from their... Okay, it sends a card from their hand to the grave, and you can hit an Exodia piece or something, it usually means you have game. Otherwise, it's kind of a nice card to have. I only run 1. Occasionally there'll be a nice situation where you have 3 monsters, so you want to get it out. Next up is Evil Swarm Ophion. I haven't actually used this yet, although I would defend that it should be left in the extra deck. It still has... I'm sure I'll run into a situation where it'll be nice eventually, because I'm running 3 Evil Swarm Thunderbird, and since this needs 2 Evil Swarms, it is possible that you could have 2 at once, and you summon the Ophion and stop your opponent from special summoning level 5 or higher. It's going to be kind of difficult to protect, although you have a safe zone and you have Fiendish Chain to help keep it on the field. So it's not going to be like in a regular Ophion deck where it'll be around for days, but it could still come in handy. Next up, this is the most important extra deck card out of all 15 of the cards, Master Key Beetle. This card makes it so simple to have almost impenetrable lockdowns. What you do is, just like with White Dragon Ninja, you summon Master Key Beetle, you activate Safe Zone targeting Master Key Beetle, and then you activate its effect. It's a tiny bit slower because you can only select 1 card per turn, but use its effect and you target Safe Zone. Now, Key Beetle can't be targeted or destroyed, and Safe Zone cannot be destroyed. So it's just like having White Dragon Ninja out with just a tiny bit less attack. And instead of it being a regular monster, it's an XYZ. And then if you have a Vanity's Emptiness down, the next turn you can use this effect again. And now you effectively have the same exact combo where Vanity's Emptiness also can't be destroyed now, so you're stopping special summons. Even though you already made your special summon for the turn, you're good to go. Next up is Black Chip of Corn. This is just a tech card that a lot of people like to run whenever they have the ability to, simply because it gets rid of problematic monsters like Marshmallow and Spirit Reaper where they can't be destroyed by battle. And it also sends to the grave, so stuff that gets its effect when it's destroyed, this will get right over it. Next up, I'm running double Arknights. I really like this card. It's seeming to become a really nice staple monster removal just because it's a jack of all trades. It has protection, it's a beater kind of, it's a monster removal card, and it's It does all sorts of things in different situations. Although, because of its low attack, it's not the best beater in the world, but it's still really good and gets the job done. Then I'm also running a Beelzebub. I've never seen a reason to run more than one of these in an extra deck. If you honestly get this thing's effect off really well, chances are you're going to be in such a good situation or a good position that your opponent isn't going to be able to have more cards than you. So using multiple of these per duel is kind of rare. I mean, it is possible, but there's never been a situation where I felt like that another one would actually help. Otherwise, it's just a really good card to remove your opponent's field when you're at a disadvantage. Next up, I'm running double Symphony de Jin. This is probably the second most common XYZ I used, only under Key Beetle, simply because it has a built-in Book of Moon, it has protection, it has a fair amount of defense, so if you get it out early game, it might be difficult to get over. It's a kind of menacing card. Then there's Daigusto Emerald. I've only used this card a couple of times, but in case maybe you draw into a White Dragon Ninja and then the other's in the grave and you really need to get out, you really need to get one out and start off your lock, you can use Daigusto Emerald as an emergency Pot of Duplicity to put it back into your main deck so you can hopefully resummon it. And it also draws a card, so you're not going minus by summoning it, especially if you use Spy, that would actually be plus. And then finally is Gagaga Cowboy. This is another card that I'm running almost specifically just to deal with troll decks. If you run into something like, I suppose, Chain Burn or anything with a lot of stall cards, okay, not necessarily Chain Burn, it does depend on the build, but just stuff that uses stall. Even Exodia decks to a certain degree. It's just doing that final 800 damage, which can be the difference between winning and losing. So that takes care of the main and the extra deck, and then just a few honorable mention cards that I'm still considering having in the deck. So to start, we have Dark Arm Dragon. I would honestly recommend adding this to the deck if possible. I'm thinking of removing a barrier statue just to have this in there. Dark Arm Dragon is just a game-winning card, that's why it's limited, especially because the vast majority of monsters in this deck and extra deck are all dark, so you'll have tons of targets. And you'll be able to use Pot of Duplicity and Strike Ninja in order to control the amount of dark monsters you have. So even late game, you can still potentially get this out. Next up is Vanity's Fiend. This just seemed to fit right in because even though this isn't a stun deck, it does use Vanity's Emptiness to stun the special summons. So summoning this technically would fit right in. Although I didn't really see a place for it, so that's why it's in the side deck. Next up is Tour Guide from the Underworld. I didn't put this in because it's a level 3 and I want level 4s, but at the same time it's dark, it could help thin the deck a little bit, you could make really easy XYZs and it would really reinforce the beatdown side of the deck, but again I didn't see a place for it, so it is in the side deck. And then finally Magic Planter. I tried running this card at 2, I never went at 3. I figured there's so many continuous traps in this deck that it would be more useful than it is, but actually I was running it at 1 until very recently, but I never drew into it. I don't even remember what I took out or what I put in its place, because I took out the 1 from never having drawn it or need it. So theoretically it does work well with the deck because of all the continuous traps, but at the same time I never really felt like it was useful. You really just have to remember to be careful with how many continuous traps you're playing at once. Like, if you have double super transformation, don't set both of them just so you get it off. You can just set one and just, I guess, kind of gamble on that. Or same goes for Fiendish Chain, where if you activate this on a monster and the monster isn't destroyed, this is now on the field forever. So you just have to be careful with that. If you're finding that you do have too many traps on the field all at once, then I would recommend adding Magic Planter. But I say that if you're careful enough, you shouldn't have to. And that completes the LockDown deck. I hope everyone enjoyed, and yeah, hopefully if anyone's using this deck in the future, I wish them good luck with using it. So if you enjoyed this deck profile, please comment, rate, subscribe, and stay brutal.